host, Jonathan Casanas. I hope you're having a good Friday. It's good weather. It's definitely a good Friday for me. I hope you have a cocktail. If you don't drink, I hope you have a mocktail. It's going to be a scandalous show. To my left, I have the chair of Forward Miami, Mr. Damian Pardo, as my co-host. Welcome, Damian.
Thank you, Jonathan. For those of you who don't know what Forward Miami is, it's a local nonprofit, and actually Forward Miami specializes on trying to bring different parts of the communities together. So a show like this, or every single week when we meet, we always try to talk about something that's coming from different perspectives. So thank you, welcome, and I will give it back to you, John.
Yes, and if you notice, we have shields here between us, and that is on purpose because I have the worst garlic breath known to man right now. I can't even stand it myself, but it's also for COVID-19 preparations. But at any rate, the man to my left, which interestingly enough, I'm pretty good at stalking, but I know nothing of this man. He is actually a very interesting and outspoken person. He is the main and head anchor for Q News and It's Happening Out. I am so happy and honored to have him on our show because he has us on his show. So please welcome Mr. Al Ferguson. Welcome, Al.
Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here on the other side of the border. I'm here in Dade County.
Yeah. You needed a visa to get over here.
I did. That's right. Well, I have a long-term passport, so I got in easily.
Al, you know what's really interesting is that I'm really good at Googling people. Like I'm like just short of stalkerish. And I found a lot to be able to give you an intro, which is why I wanted an intro on you. But talk about yourself. Who are you?
Well, 2.5 years ago, I was invited to come down to South Florida. I helped the organization of starting It's Happening Out. It's happening out for a decade. There was so much talk in so many different quarters about having the view for the gay community. And people talked, and they never really implemented it. And I got invited to come here into South Florida to work on it, to be the moderator host, to be the original Barbara Walters in the gay community. And came down here and did it, and it turned out to be wildly successful. Facebook embraced it. YouTube embraced it. We would have as many as 500,000 viewers a week, and It's Happening Out. And from that, it developed into other things. Now we do, you've been an anchor. We do Q News Tonight, Queer News Tonight, daily at 7 o'clock. And we do that live, talking about the news of South Florida, but mostly of America and the world in the LGBTQ community. And we do entertainment. We do all kinds of things. So it's my full-time gig. But for years, I was involved in travel. Do you know about my association with RuPaul?
No.
I ran RuPaul's travel product. I started with RuPaul and RuPaul's Drag Race in season 2.
Stop it! No way.
Michelle Visage and I are good friends, and I came to the show the year after. Why are you so bright, Miss RuPaul?
The filter of all filters.
Season. And I came with RuPaul, and then coordinated the travel events and coordinated RuPaul's cruise all over the world for years. Was involved until season 8, and then did other related things. But I've traveled all over the world with the queens. I've brought as many as 50 of the RuPaul queens into South Florida, where we would do a Caribbean cruise, or we've done shows all over the world.
Where were you when we needed you most? Where were you? That's amazing.
And in fact, when you Google me, that's the number one thing.
Well, then I did a horrible job. I did a horrible job.
Well, I've seen you as anchor at Q News, so I believe.
You know what's funny is that
I
mean, we are super, super gracious and honored to be on your show. The show is amazing. It's super successful. It's funny. It's informative. I absolutely love it. But what's crazy is I have Damian to my left, who's the chair of my board, who's basically my boss. Now I have you to my right. You're basically my boss now. Yeah. I'm moderating between
30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah. So I'm a little scared. But last week we talked about the term Latinx. There's a few topics that kind of struck a chord with you. and you decided you wanted to come on this show and talk about a few things.
First off, one of my anchor partners in crime, Tony Lima, and anchor partner in crime, Faye Watt, they both brought my attention to your show. I knew about y'all's show, but last week was, I'm embarrassed to say, the first time I watched it, and it was like, holy crap. These guys are talking about the comedian that was here. What is his name again?
Yeah, Ed Caballo.
Yes. Well, whatever you said. And
it translates to the horse. It translates to the horse.
Sure, we're probably going to
The horse 305.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Okay. I watched it, and it was like, wow, what y'all are talking about. And I thought, and that's why we reached out and talked about it. You just need a bit of a boost, because what you're talking about here, it was just awesome.
Thank you.
With the exception of what we do at Q, I tell you, last week for me, it's a real highlight for South Florida to be able to listen to that conversation, because it was, we can use language here, right? Or
Sure, yeah.
It was a no bullshit show. It was like, let's get right to it. And I loved it. I watched every second of it. Y'all did a great job. And that's why I'm here.
Oh, good. Well, that's quite an honor.
Yeah,
I don't know, Damian, from you, but I'm definitely honored that you feel that way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you text me. You said this is, incredible platinum for us to talk about some stuff. You said you wanted to talk about a few things. One of them in particular was white privilege.
Yeah, and I promoted that for you today. The show promoted it today. It's very funny because on Queer News Tonight, and coming in, when I came into the South Florida community, I've been integrated into the LGBTQ community all over the country and really all over the world. I've ridden in Amsterdam Pride Parade, and been to Gay Mardi Gras in Sydney and ridden in the parade, and I've been all over the country and all over the world. I've been to 147 countries.
Wow.
As an illustration. South Florida was like going to the 148th country in the world.
There's a few countries in here.
Different here. It is just so different. And when I came down, coming in and out, doing the RuPaul cruises or the RuPaul events, I thought Fort Lauderdale and Welton Manors was South Florida, and then I began to realize, oh wait, it's an island in South Florida, and I've had to learn not only the diversity. Richard Gray at sunny.org and the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Broward early on, we would have an It's Happening Out, and I learned that Broward County specifically is a minority majority county. I had never heard that phrase before. A minority majority meant in the county, the population had more women, more Latinos, more gay, more religious diversity than traditional white guys, me.
Yeah.
And that was interesting, because everywhere I would travel around in the country, I was the majority of the community until I came down here to South Florida. And the joke of my circle of friends was, oh, he's the privileged white gay guy. And it kind of stuck. And we've made it a joke in a joke, but it really isn't a joke.
Yeah.
I'm the privileged white gay guy. And it's allowed us to open so many doors of conversation of going, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? How does it affect other minorities?
What does that mean to you?
Well, it's funny. I took a badge at first of going, wait, am I being disrespected, or am I being offended in some way? Well, no, it was just stating a fact that I had access and privilege to things that other people, including in the LGBTQ community, didn't have the same access to. And as a result, it was kind of a challenge. Wait, you got to learn a lot more about the LGBTQ community, because even with your longevity in it, you may not be completely as aware as you think.
Yeah.
Around the country, for example, in the LGBT communities in Dade and Broward County, you don't have the kind of diversity in their pride organizations. You don't have pride events that are specifically focusing on the Central American, Latin American, South American markets. You just don't see that. You don't see that really in New York. You don't see it in Chicago. You don't see it.
It's interesting that you say that, because Ruth Shack, who was a commissioner here that helped pass the Human Rights Ordinance originally in the 70s, used to say that we're like a little Petri dish and a little experimental thing, because the kinds of diversity we have here are not seen anywhere else. But yet most of the diversity and inclusion, whether it's language or strategies, are passed down to us from New York or DC or places that really, when it gets here, it's not working. It's not.
It's interesting. Your conversation last week about if in the Latino market, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're Cuban? Does that mean you're Nicaraguan? Does that mean you're Honduran? Does that mean you're Colombian? You're Dominican? And to me, it's interesting from the standpoint of, previous to coming to South Florida, it was the Latino market. It was the Latino LGBTQ community. In South Florida, it isn't. It's I'm Hialeah. I'm
Hispanic.
Right.
Hispanic. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so for me, it's been a learning experience. I've had to really go back to school in the last 2.5 years of being down here in South Florida, and all of my friends joke about it. That again, back to this privileged white gay guy.
But is that something you want to do? Are you interested in or are you just like, well, I live here now, I have to do it? Or you're like, I actually want to take some...
It's funny because in terms of your exhaustive and failed Google search.
So I failed miserably.
I went to Cuba on the Obama mission. And have become very passionate about what goes on in Cuba. And from that, in that first visit, I've been to Cuba now 13 times. I organized the first LGBT cruise to Cuba in the entire world.
From where? Where did it come?
From the United States.
Yeah, but what port?
From Cuba. No, from Cuba. There was a ship in Cuba, a Greek ship, and organized 500 LGBT Americans to go to Cuba. And we did a circumnavigation of Cuba, doing the East Coast, explored the roots of Castro's beginning and the revolution in Santiago in the East, and went to Cienfuegos, the artist community, and to Havana, of course, and Vigo, the national park. And in bringing those, that large of an LGBT and first time ever to Cuba, nationally, when we were marketing, come to Cuba with Al and let's explore the LGBTQ community. It's first time ever. Obama's effect in terms of allowing the people-to-people program to be expanded. I got huge backlash. And when I say huge backlash, in Facebook, we could have a post string and have 25,000 comments on it. And the negative comments, I was called Satan at least 10,000 times. And 9,840 of them came out of a little town. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Hialeah. And Hialeah said, Al is Satan to bring LGBT people to Cuba. And gay men from America are going to be killed in the streets. And it's a terrible idea. And I was supporting Castro, and I must be a communist. And this was even before this year and the last year, the reference of using socialism so frequently. But it was an interesting experience. And from there, I've really become passionate about Cuba. Have been back many times, have brought many people to Cuba. Now through the course of seniors and LGBT, probably have brought 6,000 people, Americans, to the island and explored every
Damian, coming to play devil's advocate here, coming from a Cuban, how does that make you feel exactly?
Well, listen, you're talking to a Cuban that's gay.
Well, yeah, true.
That has grown up with all of this. To be honest, especially in my younger years, I would see LGBTQ people go to Cuba for kind of like sex tourism.
Mhm.
It wasn't, I remember when certain yachts used to come for the white party and then they would go to Cuba,
Right.
to kind of have fun. And then often people would use that kind of travel experience, which of course, I mean, listen, everybody's free to do what everybody's going to do.
Right.
I'm not judging them.
Right.
That's their issue.
Right.
But as a Cuban, I know what those people, like I've actually had people tell me, oh, the Cubans think I'm so good looking. And I'm thinking, honey, it's not.
It's
You
just
don't-
not
$1
about
in
that.
dollar.
you don't understand that this is a really poor person that just needs to they need to eat.
He saw your pocket.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
pocket.
So, but by the way, Al, what I want to say about that is that, and this always strikes me, Forward Miami, we like to say that we're the salad bowl of the salad,
I heard you
of the
say
diversity
that.
salad, right?
Right.
It makes all the sense in the world to have these conversations with people from Hialeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It makes all the sense in the world. Like, what are we missing? Because we also always say, you can have a glass that's half full. You can say it's half empty. I can say it's half full. We're seeing the same glass and the same water.
Right.
Why are we not seeing it?
Right.
You
We
know?
jumped right in when Hialeah Pride started.
Yeah.
And Jane asked about it, Queer News Tonight, and it's happening out, jumped right in the sponsorship, because having a Pride event in Hialeah was highly worthwhile from my seat, because the hospital and the city commission and the mayor should embrace the LGBTQ community.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily have a great history of doing that. When I've done a number of things with Mariela Castro, and when they hosted the first Gay Pride event in Havana, we brought 40 Americans to Gay Pride. We brought the entire television show to Havana. And our presence helped cause an impromptu demonstration. And they ended up canceling the Pride Parade because of it. And
that was you.
A lot of people think, oh, well, that's really not a positive thing. Well, no, it was a very positive thing, because it allowed various sides to have conversation about what's going on in Cuba. Do I agree with the politics? No, of course I do not. The LGBTQ community in my first visit, in many respects, was treated across island better than large swaths of the American South.
Are you aware with what's happening right now with Movimiento San Isidro?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
and in fact, another related example, we just had the reporter, the national editor from the Washington Blade on, his partner.
Michael?
Michael,
Michael
Lavers, right, and his
he's
partner in
wonderful,
his in his arrest in Cuba and the release. Cuba's very, very complicated.
It is,
but
it's also very complicated if you're in Miami, and if you're in Miami and you're Cuban, and if you're in Miami, Cuban and gay.
Yeah,
Because
and that's one of the things that I thought your conversation was really fantastic last week, that I embraced so much, because I'm critical, to be honest with you, on the LGBTQ community, because a lot of the money and a lot of the embracement, especially since the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, the broad American community goes, oh, it's the LGBTQ community, or in shortcut, it's the gay community. And it really isn't. Internally in our community, it's the girls, it's the boys, it's the trans. In 2002, I know you especially remember, in 2000 and 2004, we were the wedge issues for the Bush election.
Mhm.
Gay, we were the wedge issue. We're not the wedge issue. The both Trump campaigns, gay is not the wedge issue anymore. It's trans in our community. So L and G and B and T and now Q are not all the same thing. And one of the places that I find that it is most divisive is internally in our own
we were just
community.
talking about
that.
I know. That's why
Yeah.
last week your conversation was so fantastic. And then when you tumbled into the Latino conversation, of going, oh, wait, we're not all Latino. And your salad bowl analogy, I heard loud and clear. Wait, we're Nicaraguan gays. We're
Right.
Cuban gays.
Yeah.
We're Colombian gays. It's like, wait, what? How did this happen?
Yeah.
Why are we not all of this community? Well, we're not. And,
We're not.
And to me, then, a long answer to your question, I have become passionate on this subject, not only for Latino, but for our entire community, because we don't work together very well.
And another
We do
very good
not.
point is, I'm Cuban American. I was born here. We have Cubans from a couple years ago. You can talk to them because what you hear out of their mouth is nothing like what the mass LGBTQ community understands.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
The LGBTQ community in Cuba was pivotal because they were the biggest resistance. The Castro regime didn't have much of an issue with lesbians. It was all about gay men.
Yes.
And so men were tortured. They were in ways that other people were not at all.
Yep.
So the big resistance factions against the regime really came out of the gay community.
Yeah.
And so you see that kind of alliance over time. And what a lot of people also didn't understand, you often hear, well, the blockade didn't work. The blockade, it's been 60 years, time to get rid of the embargo. Yeah. Okay, but before, and I was very much aware of Obama's policies and favored them. And I think the speech President Obama did before the Cuban Congress was the most brilliant thing I've ever heard in my life. It blew me away.
Yeah.
All that said, there are a lot of problems within the Cuban regime that we don't know about.
Yes.
During that time, hundreds of LLCs were discovered that were doing business with Cuba clandestinely here in the U.S. So I always called it the Swiss cheese embargo because it was a bit of a joke. But I also always feel, particularly that the Democratic Party and others, big moneyed interests, have and I think to some extent media participates in that, because you always hear about the mojitos and the classic cars but where's Movimiento San Isidro? Who's covering it? Who's talking about this?
Exactly.
And by the way, who shouldn't be aligned with that other than LGBTQ?
Yes, exactly right. And to your question in terms of my interest and embracing it, white gay privilege, I became much more understanding of my lack of knowledge of the LGBT Latino community with Pulse. And I don't know, again, your exhaustive Google failure. I was one of the principal voices at Pulse. And the most viewed video of Pulse was of Top Hat Eddie. Eddie Sotomayor is the most famous name, the first name that was announced of the 49. The coordination of the documentary was from me. Eddie worked for me and was the director of the RuPaul Cruises, Killed at Pulse, the first name. I was interviewed by everyone, you name a media television outlet on this planet, and I was a live interview. And it was not lost on me that person representing fanatical religious zealotry shamed himself as a gay man, a married gay man, shamed himself to try to achieve appeasement from a father, goes in and specifically targets a group of people that were Latino and gay, or gay and Latino, but they were interlinked together. And I learned from Eddie Sotomayor, he was from Puerto Rico, and I learned from that moment that the Latino community is not me. I'm gay, LGBT, but I'm white. It is different. And that moment in Pulse helped me realize that, the experience in Cuba. And interestingly enough, when Pulse happened, we had a gigantic memorial. The largest memorial in America was in Sarasota, here in Florida, where Eddie Sotomayor was from. And afterwards, almost 200,000 people at St. Petersburg Pride, one of the largest pride parades ever done. Thousands and thousands, I think 10,000 pictures of Eddie Sotomayor were held up in the crowd in that parade. What we learned from that moment is we have a long, long, long way to go in terms of bringing the L and the G and the B and the T and the Q together. But we have a long way to go in bringing religious diversity communities together, and the Latino community together, and the white community together, all even in subsets.
Well, what should come first?
Well, I think first is acknowledgement that we have this problem. You are different than me. That's diversity. You represent something different than me, but that does not mean that I can't cheer you on. and that does not mean that you can't cheer me on. And the rejection of white privilege, which is our traditional societal issue, what we've watched over the last year, this is at the heart of the problems of almost everything that we've been watching in the last year. Trumpism and political extremism and Black Lives Matter and the embracement or rejection of trans, the embracement and acceptance of, I thought your conversation last week was so interesting. I call you out on your observation about the use of the word queer. Queer is we're taking charge of the word. When we started Q News, Queer News Tonight, January 6, 2020. What a great year to start anything, by the way. I wanted to say Queer News Tonight right from the very beginning. I could not convince the executive producers and the other people involved in it because, it'll be so offensive. It'll be so offensive using the word Queer News Tonight. So we ended up using Q News Tonight. And as the year progressed, we started to say queer. Q means queer.
Right.
We're reminding you.
You didn't spell it, but you said it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just an example of everything that we have faced in the last year, the last 4 years with Trumpism.
But I think that's also an example of feeling like a label is getting pushed on you that you don't identify with.
Exactly.
Our movement has a very long tradition of giving people the space to identify themselves. That's why we have that acronym that goes on for many, many, many letters.
I wrote it down, by the way, because I couldn't remember. Did you know we started out when the Nazis put us in camps? We just celebrated the Holocaust Memorial. They identified us as queer as a negative term. And in the Stonewall riots, we identified, the police, etc., identified us as homosexuals. In the 70s, we were the GLBT community. Remember, gay was first, lesbians were second. And then everyone said, oh, no, for visibility, we should put the girls first. So we became the LGBT community. And then in the 90s and in the early Bush years, we added the Q because we wanted to be queer, whatever that meant. The most recent discussion is LGBTQQIAAP, adding questioning, intersex, asexual, ally, and pansexual. It's an example of, wait, are the Nicaraguans different than the Cubans or the Colombians? It's
absolutely
the same thing.
It's absolutely the same thing.
It's the same thing.
The issue, though, is I love the word queer for people who identify with the word queer. But for a cisgendered Hispanic gay man, that's not
or calling your show queer.
Right. Or call it. So as a community term is where I have the reservation.
Yeah, because people are now using it.
Because you're kind of imposing it on other people. It's not who said, why would somebody reclaim it from my behalf?
I'm curious, would you feel the same way about the word gay? I'm imposing the word gay on you as opposed to homosexual.
Absolutely. Yeah, so if I didn't identify it.
All right.
Well, I thought it was interesting that, even women, lesbians are now considering themselves gay. I thought that was an interesting thought because there was a GLBT. I was like, well, why are you taking on gay? And I thought, well, maybe it's being imposed on them as well. But they took it on just as
Listen,
millennials are using
Miami, a lot of times when we talk about, we say Hispanic, Latino, or Latino, Hispanic, Latin, we try to include everyone. So we actually, I know it's a lot of letters, or I know but it shows a certain amount of respect for the space that people created. As opposed to, for example, now people are reclaiming the N-word. Well, that's not, I'm not going to use that word.
They've been.
I think the really important thing to that conversation is to make sure that observation is made along the same time, at the same moment, of why we're doing it. Because too often we're making these changes and moving on, just assuming that everybody agrees with it. I've pointed out, for example, and in many quarters, this is considered offensive. Are the Cubans better Latinos than the Nicaraguans or the Hondurans?
Of course.
There's lots of,
right? Yeah.
There's lots of Cubans that go, no. Of all of the Latino sets,
but they all do. Argentinians are the best. Uruguayans are the best.
Okay, we're getting some reaction to this conversation in the studio. But why can't that be the gay boys going, no, we are the stars of our community, or the girls we're the stars?
I have a great observation about that as well. We just talked about white privilege, but can white privilege And was it a good thing? Because in the movement, especially the early, when I think about the 80s and 90s in Miami, there wasn't color, and there wasn't, because everybody was so marginalized. They were in their own communities. In Miami, the people that had privilege were the ones that were able to struggle.
Well, it's funny that you say that. First, going back to Cuba, one of the things that I've learned in my visits to Cuba, and you may disagree with this observation, but one of the things that I have learned in Cuba is, at least on the surface of what I'm capable of seeing, their perspective of color on island. Most Cubans have never been off island. They've never had the opportunity, obviously, to get off island. Their color blindness is much, much better than ours. There can be white colored Cubans in terms of pigmentation. There can be mulatto. There can be black. They have what is called blue. And blue is the joke. You are so dark, you can see the difference in that coloring, and it's the last color on the spectrum until you turn white again. That's the Cuban joke on island. They see all of those colors as Cuban, first and foremost, to your observation. And I thought it was interesting that so many Cubans viewed color that way, because while they have so many different problems, generally, my impression is that that is not one of them. We do not have that situation here. If you are me,
mind you, Cubans came here, so it's
well,
the same
I was going to say, talk about learned behavior, because those same Cubans that get here black Cubans don't see themselves as American black, and so they're racist against blacks that live here.
There it is. And
well, because the experience of race in Cuba is entirely different than the experience. And by the way, these are amazing conversations, because that's where the good stuff happens.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And so as a result, to the answer of your question, for me, white related issues in the LGBTQ community and the broader community starts with the acceptance that, yes, there has been white privilege in America. Let's start from there and then decide what's good, what's bad, and how do we improve it, as opposed to I can be one of the greatest supporters of BLM in the country, and it does not depend on the pigmentation of my skin.
And I think one of the most powerful things is when people actually think, well, this is my life, but if I were black, would it be the same? And I think most people can genuinely say, absolutely not. You know, so when we talk about privilege, both that and historically, and also understand that at times privilege lifted us up, helped us get out, did important things for us. Then I think that also changes the nature of maybe looking at the gay white man or because people walk into a room and they already have preconceived notions of those words.
Yes. And I think, to your question, the other thing that is incumbent is, once we recognize that this is a fact, then the question has to be, what are we going to do about it? And I think one of the reasons we have done so poorly internally in the LGBTQ community and broad society is that it must be an all or nothing. We can't identify that here is the problem, but how are you going to bring an al along with you? As opposed to just backslapping me and going, you're not me. You're not.
You just hit a huge nail on the head. That is one of the most important things that we need to figure out, how we bring everyone along. The very same people that helped open doors and used privilege and did everything else, as well as recognize the limitations of that and how it's changed over time.
Well, it seems like we're running out of time. Tommy's giving us
we're getting like
you were giving us the finger.
He's giving us a finger.
I wish we could talk more about this. So are you willing to come back?
You need to come back,
Ferguson. You're willing to come back? Because we want to talk more about the progressive pride flag and how that's affecting the community.
And
we want to talk about the rainbow flag and Miami versus Wilton Manors. We didn't even get to that.
We barely touched anything.
We didn't even get to that.
Jesus.
We're going to talk about the Warsaw. In Miami versus
Al, what a
Miami.
pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you to
Pleasure
everyone.
being here.
Thanks for joining us.
Guys,
and we
you're
look
doing a
forward to
great
seeing
job.
you again next
Thank you.
week. Bye-bye.